The great thing about fall is that it's perfect for going for walks in the woods. And by walks in the woods, I mean going out with friends and getting stoned. It's really fun to just grab some friends, grab a pot, and smoke up. But last night was different. I'm still a little freaked out right now. Bear with me. I'll try to fill you in as best I can. So I got a call from my friend Dave asking me if I'm going down to smoke up. I think it was around 5. I grabbed my North Face and waited for him to drive up. Dave's a pretty chill guy. We go to university together. I think he's a sociology major or something. I don't know. What I do know is that he's a good hookup for cannabis. Guy's always calling me to smoke. He showed up in his beat-up, shitty car, and we drove out to the woods near my place. Why not? You're not judging me, are you? Anyway, we went to our usual smoke spot, a small clearing in the woods. There's a stump in the middle of it, and we usually sit on it and smoke. But that's not important. So we got to the spot, and it's completely deserted as usual. It's not too dark out yet, perfect for our evening plans. Sun was just starting to go down. After sparking a few bowls and spacing out, I noticed that Dave had wandered away. And the problem with Dave is, when he's left to his own devices, he might end up hurting himself. Normally he's pretty easy to find, but it was getting dark, so I had to go and find him. "Dave! Dave!" I yelled, walking through the trees. No sign of him. The woods aren't that big. He couldn't have gone far. I tried doubling back to the clearing. Maybe he just wandered back there. When I got there, I didn't see Dave, but on the stump was a pumpkin. Given that Halloween was only a few days ago, I figured it was just someone throwing it away. After all, the clearing isn't that far into the woods. Maybe they wanted to biodegrade it or something like that. But it hadn't been tipped over or carelessly tossed there. It looked like it had been set there. As I got closer, I realized it wasn't just a pumpkin. It was carved into a sinister-looking jack-o'-lantern. I can't even describe it. It just looked evil. There was even a candle inside it, illuminating it in the dusky light. I felt really uneasy. "Dave, don't tell me this is your pumpkin," I tried calling to my friend. No response. I looked back at the pumpkin. I swear it was staring at me. I couldn't shake it. Suddenly I heard a rustle behind me. I thought it was Dave trying to screw with me. I figured he put the pumpkin there. Whirling around, I realized I was wrong. It wasn't Dave. It was some strange hooded figure, wearing what looked like a black robe. This guy was probably 7 feet tall. I froze. Who the hell was this guy? Why was he watching us? I reached for my flashlight I always kept handy in Dave and Mai's wood tips, but the guy ran. I tried chasing him, yelling for him to stop. Of course he didn't. This guy was fast, nimble, like some goddamn animal. Out of nowhere, I felt a hand grab me from behind. I immediately swung a fist, connecting it with whatever or whoever grabbed me. When I turned around, Dave was lying on the ground, rubbing his jaw. "What the hell, man?" He sat up, still nursing his new injury. "Dave, I was just looking for you, and this guy and the pumpkin." "Dude, what are you talking about?" he interrupted. Rising to his feet, he brushed off the dirt from his jacket. "You just took off running. I just wanted to stop you before you got hurt or something," he explained. "I didn't see anyone." I pulled out my flashlight and shined it in the direction the strange figure went. No sign of anyone being there. Dave motioned toward the clearing. "Come on, dude, let's get out of here. You gotta watch yourself when you're smoking." When we got back to the clearing, I pointed to the stump. There was the pumpkin, still there. I wasn't going crazy, but it was different. It was all rotted and moldy.
This is the pumpkin? Dude, this thing is gross.
I was confused. I swear it wasn't like this before. There was no sign of the candle in it, no sign of it even being a recognizable pumpkin in the last few days. Thinking back on when I first saw it, I don't know why I didn't take a picture or something just to prove it to him. Regardless, the pumpkin was a mushy pile of rot. It wasn't the jack-o'-lantern I saw earlier. Dave couldn't tell I was freaked out.
All right, let's get out of here.
I nodded. Getting back to the car, he asked,
"You okay? You look really pale."
I tried to tell him about the figure I had seen, but I knew he wouldn't listen.
"Can we come back tomorrow? I think I dropped something back there."
He offered to go back and find it, but I waved him off.
"It's dark. I'll find it in the morning."
He didn't seem convinced, but with the way I reacted to the rotted pumpkin, he knew I wasn't in the mood to go back and look. We arrived at my apartment complex, and burning on the front porch was a freshly carved jack-o'-lantern. Inside was a candle, illuminating its smiling pumpkin face for all to see. Dave pointed to it.
"Cool, dude. I didn't notice that earlier."
I did my best to keep my composure. That's because it wasn't there before. I got out of the car, and Dave yelled,
"Calm yourself, buddy. Relax."
And with that, he sped off. Something wasn't right. That pumpkin couldn't be a coincidence. I waited for Dave to be gone to take a look at the pumpkin. It looked like a normal pumpkin. Orange, round, carved out with a goofy face, casting an ominous shadow on the steps leading to the front door. I didn't think much of it until I realized there was a piece of paper taped to the back of it. I took it, my hand quivering. Written in shaky handwriting read, "We'll see you tomorrow. Don't be late."
After the events that transpired yesterday, I was kind of scared to go back to the woods. But I had to go back. I wanted to go back when it was still light out. So I called him around noon to go back. One of the worst parts about not having a car, having to rely on other people. And Dave, well, he's not the most reliable. I called him at noon. He showed up at 2. Well, late or not, I wanted to figure out what the hell had happened. As I walked out of my apartment, I noticed something odd. The pumpkin from yesterday was gone. Dave didn't seem to notice. I did. We got into the car and drove off to the woods. Conversation was light. "So, what did you drop back there?" Might try to think of something to say that would merit needing to go back. Problem is, I'm not quick on my feet. My keys. Dave chuckled. "Man, we just came out from your place. I think you got your keys." The tension began to thicken. Dave could tell something was up. My work keys." He smiled. He could tell I was lying, but he didn't want to say anything. Arriving at the woods, Dave turned to me asking if I knew where I'd dropped my keys. I needed an excuse to be able to explore freely. I don't know, dude. Somewhere out there. We should split up." He nodded and started off to the left. I began walking toward where I ran off the day prior. The stump in the clearing was abandoned. There was no sign of the man from the night prior. Even with the light of day, not even so much as a branch seemed out of order. As I wandered deeper, I thought I heard voices. Faint at first, I couldn't quite make them out. Maybe this is the same guys as last time. I decided to proceed with caution. We'll get him soon. The harvest will be wonderful. Yes, we just need him delivered at the right time. I ducked down, walking slowly toward the voices. One was deep and ominous, where the other was more nasal, almost like Dave's voice. Hiding among the trees, I saw two figures wearing similar black robes to the guy yesterday. They had their backs to me, so I inched closer. Is he aware? He saw me last night, but I was able to escape. Oh God, this was the guy from last night. I wanted to get closer to approach them and find out why they were watching me. But what was I going to do? I had nothing to apprehend them with. Should I call the cops? What would I even tell them? I backed away slowly. I wanted to find Dave. Maybe the two of us could apprehend these guys. But if you've ever been walking in the woods backwards, you realized how hard it is to be stealthy. Of course, I stepped on a branch. The inadvertent snap echoed loudly through the woods, and I saw the figures whirl around. I started to run, not looking back. There was a good chance they were gaining on me, but I had no idea. I just kept running. It wouldn't do me any good to look back. I just wanted to get away from these guys. Their talk of the harvest frightened me. What was it? When I got back to the clearing, I blindly ran into Dave, knocking him to the ground. Easy there, dude. I helped him to his feet and noticed a piece of black fabric clinging to his jacket. I wanted to tell him about the figures I saw and what I heard, but the fibers threw me off. Was Dave one of them? He bent over to the grass and leaves littering the floor. Hey, found your keys, dude. He held up a keychain that was definitely my work keys. I don't remember dropping them. Thanks, I said, apprehensively taking them from him. He motioned to the car. Want to get out of here, or do you want to? He reached into his pocket and pulled out a bag of herbs. Get straight up baked. I warily looked at the bag. Looked like pot to me. What hurt could it do? I shrugged. Dave pulled out a pipe from his jacket, packed it and said, Dude, you're going to have some weird-ass experiences out here. Why don't you spark it first and I'll make sure you don't go all schizo. He waved his hands near his head, taunting me. I put the pipe to my lips, sparked a lighter and inhaled deeply. The smoke filled my lungs and burned. A different burn, as I remember. The last thing I remember is Dave nodding and smiling. Everything started going hazy. And then I woke up. At home. I wanted to tell you about this to try and help me figure out what's going on. When I woke up, I splashed some water on my face and noticed some weird markings on my wrist and chest, just below my neckline. They looked like Celtic symbols. When I did some Googling, I found out that the ones on my wrist are the Triskele, representing the sea, sky, and land, and the one on my chest is a Triquerta, representing the unity of physicality, mentality, and spirituality. I'm not sure what these mean, or even if I'm getting them right. I'm kind of freaked out. I'm afraid these people are going to come for me. I don't remember coming home. They know where I live. The scariest part, sitting on my dining room table in my apartment was another pumpkin. It was not carved this time, but it was hollowed out. Inside was a lit candle. How it didn't go out with the top on, I have no idea. The candle went out the minute I opened the lid.
sitting here in the dark. The pumpkin that was on my table is gone. I tossed it out the window the first chance I got. I half expected there to be some kind of note, but there wasn't. Just the pumpkin. The markings on my arms, they're not coming off. I tried scrubbing them as hard as I could. Still nothing. I think they might actually be tattooed on me. I'll try rewinding things to fill you in. A million things are running through my mind. What is Dave doing with these guys? Is he one of them? Does he have those tattoos? I guess I never really paid that much attention. How did they get into my apartment? What's with the pumpkins? What about the cops? I've got to be careful. First thing I did after getting rid of the pumpkin was to find my gun. Dave never knew about it, so I guess I've got that going for me. It was still there, a 9mm handgun. I checked it to make sure the bullets were still there. Maybe I've watched too many movies, but they were. I stuffed it into the back of my jeans. I needed protection to do what I intended. I also packed a bag with some clothes and personal items. I wasn't going back home. I wasn't going to class. I was going to the cops. Screw going to class. Screw pumpkins. And especially screw Dave. So I don't have a car. That was a problem. The police station is a few miles away. Luckily, I've got a bike. I hate riding into town just because of sheer distance, but I was too full of adrenaline to figure out what was going on. When I walked out my front door, I saw that everyone on the block was taking down their Halloween decorations. But here's just the thing. There were rocks lining the walkway up to my apartment. Not all the same, but definitely meant to show something. They bore all the markings that were on my chest and wrists, just lined up neatly, clearly put there by someone who knew I was there. I grabbed one and ran. The rock I grabbed seemed heavier than it looked. I threw it in my jacket, tucked it under my arm, and got on my bike. With this, I could prove to the police that something was happening. I rode hard and fast, trying to get there as quickly as I could. When I got there, I locked up my bike, held the stone in my hand, and looked at it. It seemed warm, as if it were alive. Weird. I walked into the station and was greeted by a blinding white light. The walls seemed sterile and clean. The entire office seemed fake, like something out of a movie set. No prisoners were sitting on the bench. It was just a police station. I walked up to the front desk and told them that I needed to speak to a detective. I was told to wait. So I waited, and waited, and waited for what seemed like hours. Finally, a detective came up to me. He had red hair, a moustache, and he kind of squinted menacingly as I stood up, as if he was sizing me up. The detective introduced himself as Detective Dawson. Whatever, I didn't care. I just wanted to find out what the hell was going on. I explained everything to him, leaving out the part about smoking pot. I said we were just going for a walk or something when we came across this stuff in the clearing. I showed him the rock and the tattoos. The whole time he seemed skeptical, like I was just some kid messing with him. He picked up the rock, looked it over, saw the designs. He tossed it back to me. The force of the rock hitting me in the chest kind of threw me back, almost like he meant to throw it at me.
Kid, we get shit like this all the time. It's probably just some bullshit prank from your friend. I guess we can keep an eye out for things, but between you and me, I think you're full of shit.
He stood up and motioned toward the door. So I figured if they wouldn't believe me, maybe they would if someone ended up dead. I just hoped it wasn't me. As I got back to my bike, I ran my finger over the gun in my waistband. If I saw anything out of the ordinary, I was going to shoot first and ask questions later. I needed a place to stay. I would normally go to Dave's to hide out, but that wasn't happening. I rode my bike up to in fact, it's probably best I don't say where I am staying. I locked up my bike in the front, walked in, and said I needed a room. They asked how long. I said indefinitely. I didn't want to give them a credit card, but I had to for incidentals. I swear the clerk saw the tattoos on my arm and was staring the whole time. After getting my key, I made sure to double the lock. I probably shouldn't be using the computer, but I want to see if you guys can help me. I'm so scared. I'm sitting in the dark so they can't tell I'm here. The windows are closed and locked. The curtains are drawn. With the clerk staring, I'm worried. Should I keep moving?
An open letter to the killer of Samantha B. If you're somehow able to read this wherever you are now, know that I will find you. No father should have to watch their child lowered into the sacred silence of the earth. I don't know if there's a right age to die, but I do know it's not 17. Better at birth before eyes had filled with light and I had learned to love so deeply. Better late into old age when life's fleeting joys had been more than tasted. Better not at all. But a world where prayers are answered is a world where they're not needed. A world that isn't ours. All the hours I spent playing on the floor were wasted. All the faces and bad jokes I made to get a smile. All the music I played to inspire a song or the books I read to inspire a dream. All wasted. I thought that was all it took to make me a good parent. But I was wrong. I invested my entire life into this single purpose. But everything I had to give was not enough. I wasn't there when I was needed most, and nothing I have ever done or could ever do can change that. The police found the knife you did it with in the woods where you dropped it. It was a slow death, they told me, but passing out would have avoided most of the pain. I wonder if you regretted it as soon as your blade entered her skin. Did you mean for it to dig so deep? Did you panic when the blood wouldn't stop? Did you call for help, or struggle in vain to bandage the wound? Or were you too ashamed? I wonder if you planned the kill at all, or whether time was flying too fast and your blood pounded too loud and you didn't know how to make it stop until it was too late. Were you thinking of anyone but yourself when you did it? I don't know what private torment brought you to this point, but taking a life will never cease that pain. The pain is passed from one person to the next, enduring past life, past death, past mortal strength to bear, until the day long after you're gone, when the next victim sees the sun dawn without light or warmth, and all sounds and colors bleed into an endless gray. And then that sun too will set, passing on your pain once again. You must think that I hate you. I don't think anyone would blame me if I did. I hate that you destroyed my family. But I forgive you for everything. You may not believe me, but I promise it's true. It's everything about this world that made you into someone capable of such an act that I will never forgive. I still don't know why you killed yourself, Samantha. If you're somehow able to read this, though, know that I will find you. And somehow, someday, we'll be together again.
Dr. Tweed, so nice to finally see you again. I trust you have many stories to tell me about your adventures in the deep heart of Africa." Dr. Tweed beamed with sheer delight as he greeted his colleague at the door. A red bow tie attached to the top of his khaki blazer gave the fellow an eccentric yet scholarly appearance. The old man squinted through his bifocals while beckoning Robert to the table where 2 cups of hot tea had already been poured. "Robert, my good man," he began. Yes, of course. Join me for some tea, and I shall regale you with a tale regarding the most curious creature this old man has ever had the pleasure of coming across in all his years of gallivanting around the globe." A friendly exchange of smiles and a pleasant handshake later, and the 2 men had taken their seats. "So, Doctor, tell me about this mysterious creature of yours." Dr. Tweed's eyes lit up like a pair of bright blue sapphires. "Ah, yes, the African bow-honor spider, named after the indigenous people who reside in a section of the jungle where the creature originally hails. It's a massive arachnid. I dare say the thing is about 1/2 meter in diameter. But that's not even the most interesting tidbit about it." Good God, man," Robert gasped. "I beg your pardon, Doctor, but I'm finding it quite hard to swallow that your interest in the tremendous girth of this spider would be eclipsed by an even more fascinating factoid." The old man's lips curled into the slightest smirk upon hearing Robert's retort. "Oh, but eclipsed it is, my dear friend. Perhaps you will understand once you hear this remarkable anecdote. On my 21st night of exploring the Dark Continent, we found that one of our pack mules had begun demonstrating bizarre and erratic behavior. The beast had started to crow and moan as though it was suffering from some sort of horrible illness. Our guides had previously warned our party that the primeval forest we made camp in was rife with poisonous asps, adders, and mambas, along with other deadly serpents, so I naturally hypothesized that it had fallen victim to one of the jungle's venomous vipers. However, upon further examination, I could find no evidence of teeth marks on the animal. No wounds, no pricks, not a single thing that would indicate it had been attacked. Sounds like quite the conundrum, Doctor. Indeed it was. Even more curious was the fact that, though I found the animal's behavior to be somewhat unnerving, many of our party's guides seemed to be downright terrified. At the sight of the mule's predicament, a few of them even ran off from the campsite and into the darkness of the untamed jungle by themselves. The fools! I loaded my rifle in order to put the creature out of its misery, as it was writhing on the ground and seemed to be suffering quite considerably. But before I had the chance to pull the trigger, my eyes witnessed a truly incredible sight. No, Doctor, you're not about to say... Oh, but I am. Out of the animal's mouth crawled the bow-honor spider. Dr. Tweed took a sip of his tea. Robert could tell by his friend's reaction that it was still a bit too hot to drink. Well, like I said before, it was colossal. I do love Earl Grey. I suppose I should let it cool a bit more before I enjoy it, though. But anyway, like I said before, it was colossal. Now, while I haven't quite figured out how the giant thing was able to contort its body enough to crawl its way out of the beast's jowls, I do have a theory about what it was doing there in the first place. Tweed paused a moment for dramatic effect, reveling in the sheer mystery of his account. Well, out with it then. I must say, good doctor, that I'm absolutely enthralled by this story of yours. You must tell me what happened next. As it turns out, this particular species of arachnid has become quite feared by the natives. Hence the reason why some of my party's guides had chosen to take their chances among the ferocious wildlife and poisonous flora of the jungle, instead of staying at the camp once they realized what was behind all the ruckus. The remaining guides insisted that I shoot the spider. But you know me, Robert. I am a man of science, and what kind of academician would I be if I ended the life of such a spectacular specimen? An anthropod of such astonishing peculiarity must be studied. Alive. Robert interjected once more. But doctor, you still haven't explained what it was doing inside the mule's mouth. Have patience, my good man. All will be revealed in time. You see, the natives believe this spider to be some sort of soul-sucking demon, one that feasts upon the very life force of a man, bleeding him dry until he becomes nothing more than a withered husk. Obviously, an educated bloke like myself would dismiss such notions as nothing but foolish superstitions. But I do believe these primitive myths were onto something. Nevertheless, there is always a scientific explanation for these things. From my brief encounter with the creature, I have gathered that the eight-legged Goliath has evolved the most extraordinary of survival tactics. It appears that the spider entered our mule through its oral cavity. From there, it may have attached itself in some way to the beast's nervous system, granting it full access to the mule's movements and vocal patterns, essentially rendering the animal a useless puppet. What I'm saying, Robert, is that this creature was wearing our unfortunate ungulate like a hat on Sunday, and all of us were none the wiser. I have since postulated that the arachnid had made itself at home in the body of its hoofed host, feeding off its spinal fluid just long enough for it to plant a revolting sack of eggs. Robert's eyes widened with interest. What an intriguing yet horrifying creature, Doctor. Perhaps the guides who fled into the night weren't as foolish as you say. Could you imagine what would happen if a thing like that was loose here in England? People would be quite in a panic. He and the old man shared a chuckle. The doctor took another sip of his tea. Could I imagine, Robert? I dare say it already is. Dr. Tweed's head suddenly cocked back in a violent manner, terrible gagging noises emanating from his throat as blood began trickling from his eyes, ears and nose. 8 long, spindly legs emerged from his mouth. When I opened my eyes, there was a man in the corner of the room, watching me. I tried to scream, but my voice failed me. I scrambled back into the wall, pulling the blankets around me as a protective shield. What do you... My voice trembled. He put a finger to his lips, then slowly shook his head. He made no attempt to move. He simply stood in the corner of the room, watching me. My phone was on the bedside table, and my eyes flickered to it. I might be able to grab it in time, but there was no guarantee I could call the police before he closed the distance between us. I swallowed. He remained still, like a statue frozen in time. In the darkness, I was unable to tell his features. He was tall and slim, but apart from that, he was just a shadow. Dark thoughts fleeted through my mind. There was only one reason a man would be standing in a woman's bedroom late at night. His eyes ran over me, his gaze piercing me. I was his prey, and there was nothing I could do about it. There was a sound in the other room. We both turned towards it at the same time. His eyes shot wide open in fear, and my heart began to pound even more furiously than before. My 5-year-old son Bobby was asleep in his room. The intruder thought I was alone. Now he knew I wasn't, and that made the situation a whole lot more dangerous.
It's the cat.
My voice broke. I couldn't let him know Bobby was there. Whatever he did to me, I had to keep him away from Bobby. That was all that mattered.
Is there someone else in the house?
The man asked in a hushed voice, both angry and afraid. I shook my head furiously.
It's just me and the cat, I swear.
He didn't believe me. There was another bang, closer this time. The man's eyes darted to the door. Bobby often had nightmares and came to my room when he was too scared to go back to sleep by himself. I needed to do something, and quick. I leapt for the phone. The man was upon me in an instant, scrambling over the blankets and knocking the phone out of my hand. He squeezed my wrists together, pain shooting through my forearms, and slammed them against the wall.
That's not going to help you now.
His eyes flitted between me and the door.
It's already here.
My phone was beneath the window, just a few meters away.
What's here?
I asked, hoping I could get him distracted long enough to break free and grab it.
Is there anyone else in the house?
He asked again. I shook my head. I would protect Bobby if it meant my own life. A door handle jiggled, then opened with a creak. It was Bobby's room. It had to be. No other doors in the house had a creak like his. It let me know when he was sleepwalking. I let out an internal sigh of relief. He'd gone back to his room. It would be okay.
The wind,
I explained.
I like to leave the windows open because it gets hot in here at night. Old house, you know how it is.
He didn't believe me, and I couldn't blame him, but it was enough to distract him. I brought my knee up hard, sending him tumbling to the floor in pain. I grabbed my phone and threw open the window. That was odd. The part about leaving the windows open wasn't a lie. I left it open before I went to sleep to let the breeze in. The man must have closed it. But why? I jumped outside, hoping the man would follow me. I just needed to get him away from Bobby. He fell for it and was after me within moments. He was faster than I expected, much faster, and I tasted dirt before I reached the fence. He turned me over and looked over at the house. I could see Bobby's room. The curtain was billowing through the window. My eyes widened and a choked gasp escaped from my throat. Something was in his room. Something that wasn't human. It hunched over, its long fingers running over the walls, while its elongated head sniffed for something.
Bob!
The man put his hand over my mouth and shook his head again. He grabbed under my armpits and dragged me behind the nearby tree. He pushed me against it, held a finger to his lips, and spoke to me with his eyes. "Don't make a sound." My heart raced. Bobby was still asleep. I had to get to him. "Who is in the house?" the man asked one more time, his voice barely above a whisper. "My son, Bobby," was all I could get out. Panic was setting in, and it was becoming difficult to think straight. The man peered around the tree and then back at me. "How old?" "5, I said, my hands shaking. The man stuck his head around the tree, watching. I waited, trying to control the trembling throughout my body. I could hear nothing, see nothing. The wind blew through my nightgown, sending another round of shivers through me. "They don't have very good hearing," the man said finally, "or sight. They rely mostly on touch." "They?" He pointed to Bobby's window. "That thing in there." I wanted nothing more than to break free of the man, to run into Bobby's room and get my baby out of there. But I couldn't. I was frozen. "What is it?" I forced the words to come out, not trying to let the fear I felt inside show. He shook his head. There was a screech. I covered my ears, trying to block it out. It was as though it was piercing my very soul. While the man was distracted with his own pain, I took the opportunity to run. I ran for Bobby's window, thinking of nothing else but getting him out of there. The thing was standing over his bed, its fingers descending like Nosferatu claiming its prey. Bobby was huddled under his bed sheets, shaking. I grabbed a rock and threw it, hitting the creature square in the head. It shrieked again, running over the bed and straight for the window. I threw another rock to keep its attention on me, and as soon as it hit the window, I ran too. It chased me on all fours, tearing through the grass with its long claws. The confused man didn't have a chance to yell. It was on him in seconds, rending his flesh and breaking his bones. I ran for Bobby's room while it was busy with him, closing the window on the man's dying chokes. Bobby was under the blanket, shivering. Hey, baby." I tried to soothe him, my own voice shaking. I lifted the blanket, and he looked up at me, tears streaming down his face. Outside was silent. "There was a monster," his lip wibbled. I pulled him into a hug. "It was just another nightmare, sweetie." The creature was by the window again, its bloody fingers scraping at the glass. "Just another nightmare. It's not real. It can't hurt you." I picked him up and moved towards the door, slowly. It couldn't hear or see very well. As long as we were quiet and made no sudden movements, we could escape. "Hey, buddy," I whispered, shielding him from the window and pressing his ears as close to me as possible. "We're going to play a little game, okay?" He nodded, sniffling. "We're gonna go up to the attic, okay? We're gonna play hide and seek. You're good at hiding, right?" He nodded again. "Good. Now you need to be very quiet. You can't make any noise during hide or seek, otherwise we'll get found, and it's game over. Can you do that for me?" He nodded. "That's my little guy." We made our way upstairs as I heard Bobby's window open. I pulled on the attic ladder and sent him up first. I followed, pulling the stairs up one by one so as not to make a noise. The creature searched the house high and low, but it never found the drawstring to the attic. Bobby played hide and seek like a champion and slept in his hiding spot until police sirens woke us up the next morning. The man's death was chalked up to a feral dog. They never did find out who he was, which was perhaps the biggest mystery of all. When they asked me why my phone was outside, I told them we escaped to the attic when I heard an intruder in the house. It was only half a lie. They'd never believe what I really saw. The thing is still out there. I don't sleep with the windows open. Not anymore. Every now and then, I find Bobby sleeping in the attic, however. When I ask him what he's doing up there, he says he's playing hide and seek.
With who?
The Nightmare Man. But he can't see or hear us very well, so he never finds me up here. I always win.
I don't know what woke me up. Maybe it was the cold air in the room. Maybe it was that my door was open. Either way, I knew that I wasn't alone. I made a point of closing my door every night, and my roommate knew not to open my door unless it was an emergency. My nightlight still worked though, which was a small comfort. I was afraid, so very afraid of the dark. "Hannah?" I asked, slightly louder than a whisper. No response. "Hannah!" I shouted. Nothing. Just as I was about to put my feet on the cold, cold floor and walk a few steps to my door, I heard a creak under my bed. I quickly retracted my feet back under the covers. There couldn't possibly be anything hiding under my bed, right? That's just what kids think when they're scared. "Hannah!" Silence. The hall outside my room was dark and empty. My eyes played tricks on me, made me think about how every shadow could be a nightmare waiting to strangle me. Or worse. "This is ridiculous," I mumbled to myself. I put my feet down on the floor. Then I heard breathing under my bed. Screaming, I quickly retracted my feet once again. Someone was under my bed. Someone who wanted to harm me. Hannah was nowhere to be seen, and I didn't know what to do. Could I make it out of the apartment? But then what? Would the intruder follow me, catch me, murder me? I couldn't move from the fear. The shadows danced in the hall, making it look as if I was being watched. I didn't care now. I knew that I would have to brave the hall and its darkness to escape. I don't know why I did what I did next, but reaching out my arm while keeping a steady gaze toward the hall, I grabbed a pillow. I slowly but steadily lowered the pillow toward the floor. It lay there, still as a pillow should be. I breathed a sigh of relief. Then a hand quickly shot out and grabbed the pillow. I screamed again, my fears having been realized. I stood up in my bed, centered myself and leapt, but I misjudged my jump and landed closer to the bed than I wanted. That hand grabbed my ankle and pulled. I kicked and kicked, but the hand would not let go. I screamed, cried, begged for it to release me, trying to pull myself forward by grabbing for the bookcase. Heavy books rained down as the hand held its grip. In my panic, I tried to turn around and look down deep into the dark pit that was under my bed. I saw Hannah. I saw that she was bleeding from her jaw. No. Where her jaw was supposed to be. I saw the fear and pain in her eyes and how she tried her absolute best to remain calm. I saw her head on my ankle, almost pleading, begging for me to join her. Tears streamed down her face as she let out a howling shriek and let go of my foot. She looked past me. The last thing I saw was Hannah's jaw gently thrown into my room. As it landed with a small thud next to me, the shadows in the hall danced closer.
This week, I was supposed to digitize all of Dr. Marnin's patient files. I was feeling good about my progress when I saw it, a second filing cabinet hiding behind the shelves that I'd never noticed before. Sighing with fatigue, I yanked open the first drawer. I plucked out a file from the A section and began to read. Aberdeen, Carla. All right, Carla, let's see if you're in the system. I set the file on the desk, sat down at the computer, and typed in her name. Nothing came up. Oh, hell no. I'm not doing all the files in this cabinet. But I sighed, opened a new patient file, and began copying the data. Carla Aberdeen, DOB 42472, 5 foot 9 inches, 176 pounds. Finally, I got to the doctor's notes. They were written in messy script, as if in a hurry. I put on my glasses and read, Complaint of eczema, itchiness after eating some fruits. Lungs may be useful. I stopped and reread the last line. Lungs may be useful? I shrugged, figuring it was some sort of mistake or reference to something. I typed it into the computer and took the next file from the cabinet, Mr. David Akovsky. But the doctor's notes were even stranger this time. Family history of heart attacks. Large skin surface area. I typed him into the system and stared at the screen. Large skin surface area? What does that even mean? When I got to the next one, a Miss Katerina Allenson, I felt the knot in my stomach tighten. It was a file for a little girl, and it read, Night terrors ever since 6th birthday. Mom says increased anxiety. Feet are perfect size. I rolled away from the computer. Heart pounding, I picked up the file and studied it. There must be an explanation, but I couldn't think of anything. I took a deep breath. Then I picked up the phone and dialed the number on Katerina's file. But what will you say? I didn't even know. I just had a terrible, nagging feeling and wanted to do something about it, but I wasn't in luck.
We're sorry. You have reached a number that has been disconnected.
What are you doing? I whipped around. Dr. Marnin was standing in the doorway, his arms crossed over his white coat. I was digitizing the files, like you told me to. I stuttered, slamming the phone down. Not those files. He violently grabbed the files from the desk, shoving them back into the file cabinet. Then he pulled a small key from his pocket and turned the locks on each drawer. Finish this up, okay? I nodded, and then he was gone.
The silence pressed in. The waiting room was empty and still. I checked the clock. 4:45. No more patients would be coming in. It was only Dr. Marnin and me in the office now. So I did what any reasonable person would do. I shut down the computer, grabbed my coat, and started for the door. As I hurried towards the exit, I saw Dr. Marnin at the end of the hall. He was opening a door. The door he told me went to the supply closet. But beyond him, I could see a set of stairs snaking down into the darkness. My neighbor brought over some baby shoes the other day. They were pink and had glitter on the toes and sequined flowers on the sides. We cooed over them for a few minutes, and I told her how much I appreciated the gift. After she left, I threw them in my bedroom closet with all the other baby junk I've been given over the past 6 months. 6 months ago, everyone in town started to ask about my baby. I do not have a baby. I have never given birth or even been pregnant. I thought that I was being mistaken for someone else. I'm not particularly unique looking. Maybe some other short, dark-haired and hazel-eyed girl gave birth recently. But I am shy by nature and southern by birth, so I was too polite to say, "You're wrong. You have the wrong person. I don't have a baby." I said things like, "Oh, okay," mostly because it must have been a case of mistaken identity. People brought over baby clothes, a crib, a swing that plugs into the wall and jiggles, toys and shoes and diapers. A very weird situation to be in for sure. But then, to put it plainly, things got weirder. I was in a grocery store, and the manager, a friendly old man, came up to me and asked about my sweet little girl. He asked if she would like the different formula he had suggested, and if I wanted more. I just smiled. When I got home, I found a formula in my grocery bags and an almost empty can in my cabinet. I didn't even remember putting it in my cart. The thing is, everyone has been so nice to me, and the situation is just so odd that I started to go along with it. "How's the little darling today?" a neighbor would ask when I went to get the mail. "Oh, she's wonderful, sleeping through the night," I'd answer. Then a young woman that got coffee at the same place as me asked about a play date with her 9-month-old and my then 5-month-old. I sort of blew it off. Next time I saw her, though, she talked about setting up another play date and how much fun our two darlings had. She showed me a picture on her phone. "Aren't they just precious in this picture? Your little girl has the most beautiful blue eyes. Her dress really makes them pop. I'll text this to you." I looked at the picture and saw a chubby baby in a red shirt and blue shorts. It had dark hair and dark eyes. It was the only baby in the picture. I went home and opened my bedroom closet full of baby junk. I pulled out teddy bears and an unopened box with a changing table in it. I pulled out a shopping bag with a few baby clothes. I dumped it out on my bed and looked through them. I found a light blue dress. A few weeks ago, I decided to call my mom.
"Hello?"
She answered.
"Mom, it's me,"
I said.
"Oh, Pearl, hi. How are you?"
I asked. We don't talk often.
"I'm good. We're all good out here."
She paused, then asked,
"How are you two doing?" "Us two?"
I asked, hesitantly.
"Now, don't act like that. I know I haven't been in touch, but I do care about you and my grandbaby."
She said sourly.
I know, Mom. She's crying. I got to go."
I lied.
"Give Holly my love,"
she said, and then hung up before I did. The funny thing is, Breakfast at Tiffany's has been my favorite book since I was a kid. I'd always thought Holly would be a great name for a kid I would eventually have. I went into my room to put my phone down after my short conversation with my mom. The changing table and the crib were neatly set up by the window. I didn't do that. I'm sure I didn't. I walked over to the crib and looked inside. Nothing was there. I walked over to the changing table, then took a step back before I bumped my shin against one of the legs, because I remembered that I had done that before. I looked down and saw a bruise on my skin. I know I hit it against the changing table, but I also know that they weren't in here before. I know it.
"How's Holly today?"
my neighbor across the street asked. We were both out grabbing our mail.
"She's good. Happy as ever,"
I said.
"I heard her screaming up a storm when you came home last night. I'd be surprised if you were able to get her to bed at all." "Once she lays down, it usually doesn't take too long,"
I replied. I went inside and looked through my mail. A bunch of junk, a few red envelopes. I put everything down on the kitchen table and opened a cabinet to get out a cup. I heard some noises coming from my room. I paused and listened. I didn't hear anything for a minute, so I grabbed the cup and got some water from the sink. I heard something over the sound of the tap. Holly must be awake. I went into my room and looked down in the crib. Holly's stuffed elephant was in the crib. I reached down and picked it up. It was cute. No wonder someone got that for Holly. I put the elephant back down in the crib and brought the cup to my mouth to take a sip. I realized I was holding a baby bottle. Mom brain, I thought. Where did I put that cup down? But then I saw I was holding my cup. I'm not a mom. What the hell was I just thinking? I looked back over the crib. Why do I still have this crap in my room? I kicked the crib. Then I kicked it again. Then again, until the wood began to splinter. I pushed the changing table over to the side. I opened my closet and shoved in the pieces of the crib and any other baby-related item I could find. I slammed the door closed. I can't keep this charade up, I decided. I can't go along with this nonsense anymore. I went to get coffee this morning. I was so tired. I felt like I hadn't slept all night. The barista smiled at me.
"Your kid keep you up?"
she asked.
"No,"
I said firmly. Her smile wavered. I sat down at a table to drink my coffee. Some woman walked up to me. She asked how I was doing, how my daughter was doing.
"I'm fine,"
I answered, and left it at that. She sat down at the table, and in a hushed and concerned voice, she asked me if I was experiencing any depression. She said that new mothers often feel like this. "I'm not a new mother," I said. A man came in and walked quickly up to the table. He bent down and whispered something in my ear. It didn't register at first. "What?" I asked. "You left your kid in her car seat, in her car," he said again. I jumped up and ran outside. I unlocked my car and opened the back seat. How could I be so stupid? How screwed up am I to leave my kid in the car? But nothing was there. No kid, no car seat. I drove home. I sat on my bed and looked through the pictures on my phone. I looked at the picture of the chubby kid in the red shirt. I stared at it. Where is she? Where is Holly? There's only one kid in this picture, but everyone else says there are two. Chubbs and my little Holly, bright blue eyes, blue dress. She does look so pretty in that blue dress. I do have a bit more to write, but Holly just started to cry. I need to go check on her.